Thank you, Madam Prime Minister, for your words, for your actions, and for your inspiration. We are now going to move on and introduce to you Thomas Rohden. He is the chairman of the Danish China Critical Society. He is going to moderate our next session, Standing Up to China's Authoritarianism, Parliamentary Perspectives. Thomas, over to you.
Thank you so much, and welcome to this session that I have been looking so much forward to. I know you're all waiting for Obama, but this will be nearly as great. So today we are going to talk about China and the rise of China and the authoritarianism that they are putting all over the world. And with me here on stage, I have a wonderful panel of parliamentarians from all over the world. On the first, from Taiwan, rockstar and independent member of the parliament, Freddy, welcome to you. From Uganda, a member of the parliament representing the Democratic Change Party, Akello, welcome to you. And from India, also member of parliament, Shwet Kumar, welcome to you. And Shwet, let's start with you. I think that this topic is really interesting because we are seeing right now the rise of China in all of the world. We are seeing how they are trying to be more active in Africa, how they're trying to threaten the countries that they live nearby. We are seeing how they're using economic pressure on countries who are trying to stand up against China. As a parliamentarian in a neighboring country to China, who have been working a lot of on China, what have you been doing, and what do you think parliamentarians should do on this issue?
Thomas, let me give some context here. The India-China border was by and large peaceful for a very, very long time, since the 60s. But for no rhyme or reason, in the year 2020, China suddenly had incursions into Indian territory, started warmongering, and had this massive confrontational attitude. And it's not just India, it actually escalated its conflict and tension with almost all its neighbors. And we just heard the Prime Minister of Lithuania speak about the ugly behavior of China vis-a-vis Lithuania. So, we had for a very long time believed the false narrative of China's peaceful rise. We all now know that it's a myth. It was a myth. So China was actually biding its time and waiting for the most opportune moment to influence the world in a negative way. And we saw that sometime in the year 2019 and 2020. Now, we have two world orders. One world order, the democratic or the liberal world order, which believes in human rights, freedom of speech, rule of law, international order, and the other expansionist authoritarian order, which believes in none of this, rather believes in attacking the territorial integrity of other sovereign countries and not respect for any international global order, which China subscribes to. Now, well, why is that a matter of concern for us? Of course, because we all believe in democracy and liberalism. Now, how as parliamentarians and as freedom-loving citizens of the world, how can we approach this issue? Right? Now, apart from military intimidation, China has few other tools in its rule book. One is economic coercion, and my sister Lucy here from Uganda will speak about this tool in the arsenal of the Chinese camp, how they have been going around the world using the debt trap diplomacy. And the other tool in the rule book is the massive propaganda which they engage in, which some people might call the wolf warrior diplomacy. Now, I was hearing to the Prime Minister just a couple of minutes ago, and she told that appeasement never works. When you have a bully in front of you, and China is a typical school bully, the more you accuse to the bully, the more it will bully you. The moment you stand up to the bully and say, hey, enough is enough, I'm not going to be bullied anymore, they'll back off. And that's typical Chinese behavior. So as parliamentarians, there are multiple strategies. One is, of course, we have to pressurize our government to develop alternative economic models. I'm glad that India, my country, is now part of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, which has been developed by Quad, the Quad nations, which I think will be an alternative to BRI, which again is one of the key platforms for this debt trap diplomacy which China is engaging in. The EU has the Gateway Project, the Economic Gateway Project, which was initiated in December 2021. I think I will urge all the EU nations and their governments to accelerate this project. The Clean and Green Initiative is another wonderful initiative, but hasn't gone too far. So, as MPs, we need to, pressurize our government to accelerate these alternative economic models. And secondly, I think all the democracy-loving nations need to work together, need to stand up to the bully, as Lithuania, which is such a small nation, far off from China, has. I salute the people of Lithuania and the government of Lithuania. I think more nations need to do that, certainly my own country.
I think one of the things that you said were very interesting about China being the bully, because maybe in Africa, China have tried to be the bully who didn't look like the bully. Can you tell, Lucy, how have you been trying to work with China? Because they have been very active in Uganda and actually trying maybe to give you loans and look good, but maybe there's also another end to that tale.
Thank you very much, and everyone. It's great to be here and talk to all of you. I'm happy to talk about China, which has really pulled Africa. And I must start by saying, I personally picked interest in issues of China through IPAC, Interparliamentary Alliance on China, because they opened our eyes to the many things that are happening in Africa. And by the way, we were sleeping. I chair actually a committee, an accountability committee of Parliament. It's called COSASI. It's Commission, Statutory Authority, and State Enterprises. In this committee, we look at issues that are raised by the Auditor General, accountability issues. And I just want to highlight one issue that we discussed, and that is about the expansion of our airport. When we were told that, there was a lot of monies that were embezzled, when we started looking through, we were puzzled as a country. And this is something that is happening everywhere in Africa. One, a Chinese company comes to our government and says, you know what? We can expand your airport, make it beautiful. Of course, our airport, Entebbe International Airport, is a very small airport. You can't compare with this one in Denmark here. They come and say, okay, we are going to do this, and we'll need $200 million. Of course, for them, it is just. I mean, $200 million can do a lot in Africa. Right now, we're struggling with a lot of issues. And then they say, okay, you know what? It's the Chinese company coming, it's CCCC, Quadro C, coming, and then we are saying that the same company says, we are looking for the money. So the Exim Bank of China will give the loan. And then it says, okay, we are the ones in charge of the agreement. You don't determine what is in the agreement. And one of the clauses, which is very dangerous in that agreement, was, if you have a problem, we're not going to solve it in Uganda. You have to come to China, and then we solve it in China. And using which language? Chinese. How many Ugandans speak Chinese? So,
you could learn, maybe?
No, I don't even know. I don't even know how to say thank you in Chinese. I've even never been to China. And possibly because of talking about this, I may never go to China anyway. So, they hide this. Our government goes ahead and signs the agreement, and they are forever locked. Locked forever. Our children, our great-great-grandchildren will have to pay this price heavily. I must say this. China is a bully, just like my colleague here said. And they come to African leaders, just like my president. They come. Let me tell you, my president loves China. Oh my God. There is a day he was on state television talking about China, how China is so good. China is better than the Western countries. You people are bad. According to my president, you're bad because you make stringent laws, you are very democratic, you are very systematic. Before you give something, this must be done. But he doesn't know that China is a rat, is like a rat. And I'm saying it is like a rat. I have not said China is a rat. But I've said China is like a rat. You know what a rat does? It bites you and then blows cold air. You will never feel it. You begin to feel it when you wake up. You know, I say this because I come from Africa, where poverty is very normal. You sleep in a house which is infested by rats and cockroaches. It is normal. So when they bite you, you wake up and you say, oh, my toe is hurting. What has happened? The rat has bitten you. Maybe you ate some meat last night. You didn't wash it properly. The rat will come and feed on that. So how does the rat behave? It bites you, blows cold air, you go back to sleep. Again, bites you, it blows cold air, you go back to sleep. By the time you wake up, you have a wound and it is paining. That's exactly how China behaves. My call to you, the Western countries, you have made African countries believe that it is so difficult to operate with you. We used to have a good marriage, but now China is taking over. It is behaving like the good husband. But in actual sense, China is not the good husband. So I call upon you, all of you who are here, let us rise up and support Africa by making sure that some of the things that are coming to Africa are actually transparent. And I call upon everyone who is here, those of us who are working on China, let us give as much information as possible for our parliamentarians to appreciate. I don't want to be the only member of parliament from Uganda to stand up and say no to China, but I want as many members of parliament as possible to come out and say no. Whatsoever China is doing is bad for our country and for Africa. Thank you.
And Lucy, you're saying that that China wants you in a marriage. I think you're not the only one, because when I look at Taiwan and China, it sometimes feels like they're trying to drag you into bed. And you're going a bit the opposite way, Freddy. You are on the front line in this battle against China. What have you learned that you could give on to the world about how you are trying to defend your democracy?
First of all, I want to thank to that opportunity to be here to share Taiwan's experiences. And then second of all, I think just like Lucy, I think four of us, we are on the stage that been banned in China. We might be not able to travel in China, although I can speak Chinese, but but we are not be able to travel there.
Four banned people in one panel. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And I think as in the front line against China, I think in the last couple years, I have heard a lot of stories, no matter the foreign governments or the international enterprises, that they continue to bow their knees to Chinese government or the market to avoid to take a position to just for satisfy Chinese government or the market. For instance, like the movie industry. Nowadays, Hollywood started to discuss about how they have been trying to changing their scripts for satisfying Chinese government or the market. And it has been like that for years, but recently they started to find out that this kind of a situation eroded the freedom of speech or freedom of creation in movie industry. That's what happened recently, but actually in Taiwan, that's happened in the late 90s, back in 2 or 3 decades ago. So I can remember that back then when the international media asked me about how you deal with the Chinese infiltration. I was like, yeah, it looks like an issue that Taiwan has to deal with. But if the world keep a peace in China, then it's gonna be everybody's problem. It's gonna be everybody's issues, and that's exactly what's happening right now. That what's happened in the Hollywood, it happened in Taiwan in the late 90s. And what I want to say is that since then till now, the situation just got worsened. This kind of Chinese infiltration has run into like neighborhoods, schools, I mean in Taiwan, and religious organizations, and definitely social medias. Taiwan by statistics, Taiwan is the most affected country by the offshore disinformation attacks. So all the social media platforms in Taiwan are affected by the Chinese disinformation operations. So these kind of things might happen in your countries or in other Western democracies in the future. So what I want to say is that I might not have the best solutions for you all, but I have the experiences. You can foresee if we don't do anything, then what will happen in your country in the future? Because we have been through this process already. And we might not have the best solution. That's why otherwise we didn't have to occupy the parliament, form a social movement back in 2014 to stop the China-leaning government back then in Taiwan, ask them to stop their pro-China policies. So, but we still try to work on some solutions since 2016. We try to amend our national security laws. We try to adopt the anti-infiltration laws, try to make the criminal penalties higher with espionage or other activities. But one thing is very important is that we don't just deal with the traditional political infiltration or military threats. We try to face with the reality that we are dealing with the infiltration under cultural and economical information aspects as well. So we try to amend the laws that to avoid the funds from the Chinese political institutions, but they under the disguise of the third country capitals. To Taiwan to try to infiltrate our economy or infiltrate our industries, and we try to come up with a review system for those core persons, core members in the sensitive or the innovative technology industries to avoid them to during the exchange of them in China to those high technology being stolen in China. So we try to face the situation, not only deal with the traditional political or military threats. We try to see what we can do in other aspects. And one thing is very important that is to, not just in the administrative or legislative aspects, but also the society in general started to find out that we have to look into this infiltration seriously. So what I just said, what I just mentioned about the movie industry or even the music industry I'm in, nowadays, a lot of artists, they move their career back to Taiwan. A lot of artists or their management started to think about the market outside of China and like how they can expand their market in Scandinavia, in Copenhagen, to just like Kimberly came to Copenhagen to share her new single yesterday. I think there are more and more ideas coming up to see outside of China and to think about how we can expand our market without sacrifice our values, without sacrifice our freedom of speech and creations. So I think that's very important that society started to realize that.
But I think this infiltration thing is very interesting, and maybe especially to you, Lucy, in Africa, because how do you see this evolving right now? There have been an infiltration, especially on economic and infrastructure by China in Uganda, but is this continuing now? Or have you figured out, your government, that they need to stop this?
Well, it's still continuing, and it's something, like I said earlier on, the way China is perceived in Africa, it makes it easy. Life is easy with China. Everything is easy. It's easy to get a visa to go to China and do business. And by the way, in Uganda, we have categories of products that come from China. They say, okay, the one which lasts 1 day, 2 days, 3 months, yeah, you have it all. So there's a category. I mean, it makes it very easy because it's cheap. Everyone can afford. So the infiltration is really there. And you go to Africa, Uganda, it's not uncommon to see a Chinese company or 2 or 3 Chinese having a small shop, just like any ordinary Ugandan or African. And yet this is supposed to be something that is supposed to be for a Ugandan. So they are there. And secondly, they behave like they are now the nationals. Recently, a whole cabinet minister who is in charge of monitoring the working conditions of workers in Uganda went in a company owned by Chinese to inspect the working conditions of the workers. And she was blocked and said, who are you? You have no authority to enter into my premise. So this is the kind of infiltration, this is the kind of authority which now they have. It took almost 2 hours for the whole thing to be resolved, and then the minister was able to inspect. But I mean, after that, what happened?
And Lucille, just break in because there's a question from the crowd.
Yes.
About, how can the US and how can Europe make some alternatives to the Belt and Road and to all these Chinese investments? What do you need from the European Union and from the US so that it will be easier for you to go into your parliament and say, no, we're not going the Chinese way, we're going the European way or the American way?
Well, I want to start with the recent pandemic. I just want to give an example of what I'm talking about. The recent COVID pandemic, when the vaccines came, this is what my president said. You see, you said these people love you. They don't love you. They're first vaccinating their people, and then the remaining will come to you. They're holding back the vaccines. I am telling you this is the perception that we have. It's like from the perspective of the Western, we come second. And then China was too fast and said, oh, it's okay, you can have the vaccine. Start the vaccine. By the time we started now getting the vaccine from the West, it was now say, okay, you see, it is like I said earlier on, 2 husbands fighting for a beautiful woman. And I'm being very sincere. I don't know how to hide things. So this is the feeling. Now, when you talk about, we have a lot of funds coming from World Bank, for some of these projects. Now, because most of my African leaders are actually undemocratic, anyway, it may cost me some issues back home, but because they're undemocratic, it's easier to deal with China because then they can bypass certain things. Not so. They can easily bypass some of the democratic, principles, because World Bank is saying, okay, recently we had an election and it was really bad. We have a lot of issues going on out there where opponents are arrested and all that. So there has also been a call from my home that, make sure you don't fund these things. Make sure you don't fund Uganda because it is violating human rights. So because of that, World Bank maybe will come with funding and say, you must have this, this, and this. And then China is saying, you know what, it's easy. Exim Bank, just sign. We shall give you the money tomorrow. As easy as that. So for me, the thing is, let's go back to the drawing board. I am not saying we should drop the key principles of human rights and democracy. No. What I'm saying is we must have a genuine dialogue. And I'm happy after all this, because of the time my president went on TV and really had it tough on the Western countries. But I'm happy after our intervention and saying, no, this is wrong, he went backwards and then had a discussion with a number of embassies, especially from the West, including the US, to discuss some of these things. So this is work in progress.
And Syed, also to you, a question about alliances that we had here from the crowd, because somebody is asking you, do you think that the best answer to China's rising power is a US-Indian alliance that will take care of Asia, or how do you see that?
Already the US and India are strategic partners. And I think they are moving in that direction. The Quad is, the latest summit of Quad, of course, articulated the Indo-Pacific economic framework. I think it's the economic coercion of China which is of greatest concern. Because of the economic rise of China over the last few decades, it has been able to do what it's doing. So yes, certainly, something similar to the BRI, I think it's an alternative. We need to have an alternative platform where countries from the South can come together and have the belief that their infrastructure, their economy will be supported, as China is doing it, of course, in a negative way.
But would that also mean that India needs to change policy in some ways? Because, for example, you know, there have been a lot of criticism about India regarding the whole situation with Russia. So if India wants to move closer to the United States and have a closer bond with them, do India also need to move in that direction, do you think?
Certainly. I have been a critic of some of the policies of my government, not necessarily the policy on Russia, but certainly India also needs to show the political will and the willingness to come forward and be with countries, because India has this sometimes typical big brother attitude. And oftentimes the neighbors of India, the smaller neighbors of India, look towards China because of this so-called high-handedness or big brother attitude. So I completely agree with the suggestion that India needs to do more and ally more with Western countries for protecting democracy, for standing up to authoritarianism.
And for you, Freddy, there's also a question on you know, right now Taiwan is taking the tough toll and fighting China. Are you, could you say, disappointed on the other countries in Asia because you would like more support from them? Or how do you see Taiwan's cooperation with other countries in Asia at this point?
I think in this point, of course, Japan is very close with Taiwan, and the relationship between Japan and Taiwan getting closer and closer, more and more stronger. And Australia is also try to help Taiwan, support Taiwan with stronger. I hopefully in the next few years will continuously like that, since their power just changed a few weeks ago. But other southeastern countries, I think they still kind of blur and depends on different countries. And so we have some of the countries we have stronger ties, like Vietnam or some other countries. But some of the countries they try to stay a little bit blur between Taiwan and China, or which you say between the US and China. So what I want to say is that, so I think for us, because all these countries around China, nearby China, they have historical complicated relations with China. So it's not that easy, like, oh, not even in India, it's not that easy, but some smaller countries compared to India, they will be more difficult for them. So for Taiwan, I think it's more important to get the support from the Western countries, and especially not just, I think, of course, first of all, to have the Western democratic countries to keep supporting Taiwan to join the international organizations like the UN, WHO, and so on. But the second of all, I think, which is very important, is to have all the Western democratic countries try to have their governments to lift the restrictions when they are engaged with Taiwanese government. Try to bring our friendship on the table in the public, and try to step by step make the step to strengthen the official relations between the democracies and Taiwan. I think that can make the the relationship between Taiwan and the world be more sustainable and stable. So I think for Taiwan, it will be very important to keep, because for now, we know that the relationship between Taiwan and the world is kind of very close. And I think there are a lot of allies and friends around the world support Taiwan, but we need to make that on the table officially.
But I think many people, we have two parliamentarians here, and I see also a couple of parliamentarians in the crowd, are asking themselves, what is the best way to support Taiwan? Is it most important to have more diplomatic relationships, more economic? So what would be the most important message you would give to them?
Yeah, just like I just said, try to ask your government to lift the restrictions between your government and Taiwan. Not like at once, but step by step, like the US or in Japan as well. They try to, have our friendship on the table. I think that can keep Taiwan free
Thomas,
and
can
safe.
I just add to this?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, adding to what my friend Freddy has said, I've spoken many times in Indian Parliament about greater cooperation between India and Taiwan. It's such a shame that the 23 million Taiwanese people are deprived of their health rights. Taiwan is not part of the World Health Assembly. And if any country has done in helping the world during the pandemic, in supplying PPE kits and its experience of tackling corona, I think Taiwan was at the forefront. But it's so unfortunate that because of coercion of China, Taiwan has been deprived of the WHO membership. So to start with, we may not extend political support to Taiwan, but at least Taiwan should be part of all international bodies. So.
Okay, and great. And now we are running on our last minutes, but I think there is one question that I would like to know, and I see also a lot of people in the crowd would like to know, because all of you and myself have been put into the Chinese Black Book, and you know, sometimes that could be nice, because then at least you did something in this world, right? But how do you feel about, you know, speaking here today and speaking generally? Are you ever afraid of the consequences of standing up against China?
If I can start, like I said, for me, what gave me strength, first of all, when my first interaction on issues of China was with the International Catholic Legislators Network in Rome, and because there was a team that came and talked about the influence of China. Then secondly, through IPAC and sharing with friends and colleagues from China, it made me realize that actually I have a cause to fight for, because where I come from, we had over 20 years of conflict, isolated from the rest of the world, and the world wasn't caring. No one was talking about our suffering, our pains, and the many people who are in IDP camps. I thought, as a member of parliament, I have a voice. I have where I can talk about. This is a chance for me to talk about it. I have a little, even if it is just one. I change only one life. So I am not afraid. I will talk about this if I have the opportunity. And I want to implore, especially African legislators, to come on board to talk about these issues. Thank you.
How about you, Freddy?
Definitely, because I think you might all know that there are some pro-China extremists in Taiwan. They attack the Hong Kong activists when they travel in Taiwan. They attack the human rights activists in Taiwan as well. So, and when I was not a politician, when I toured around the world, when I played in the US, the so-called Chinese students send a message to our manager, says, if you let them on the stage, we will kill you. Things like that. So these kind of things continuously happen, these kind of threats. But I take it very seriously. I discuss with my family, with my wife, and talk about if something bad happens, what we should do, how we should, where my wife and my daughter, we can settle down them, things like that. We took it very seriously, but we are decision makers in Taiwan. I don't want to say I'm not afraid, but we have to make the right decision. Yeah.
Wow, wasn't this quite a panel? Do we even want Obama to come now, or should we just continue? No, I know that you need to have lunch, and so do we. So please give a round of applause for the panel, and thank you so much for listening.